Hello and welcome to my office. Today we're going to be continuing to talk about organizational behavior. There's a lot of material that I think you're going to find really relevant to the world of work and the way that you get along with others in the world. So let's go ahead and get started now.
Organizational Behavior, Chapter 5. When thinking about Chapter 5, Theories of Motivation, there are several learning objectives. First, I'd like by the end of this chapter to have you understand the role of motivation in determining employee performance. Be able to classify the basic needs of employees, to describe how fairness perceptions are determined and consequences of those perceptions. Understand the importance of rewards and accomplishments, and be able to apply motivation theories to analyze performance problems. So let's get started. When we think about performance, it's important to really break down what are the factors related to it. The three factors are motivation, ability, and the environment. When we think about it, if you have the ability to do something, that's important. But if you're not motivated or in the right environment where you can be successful, things aren't going to pan out. Conversely, you could be motivated to play in the National Basketball Association League, but if you're 5 foot and that's it, and you never grow taller, no amount of motivation can overcome that ability. So in really thinking about what environment, ability, and motivation leads to performance helps us to diagnose when people will be motivated and what will happen when they are. This chapter is full of theories. When you think about motivation, it's one of the chapters or one of the concepts in organizational behavior with the most level of theories. As you're thinking about them, really think about them as heuristics. In what ways do they help you think about human behavior and motivation? And that will help you to start to think of these as different tools or buckets that you can really characterize human behavior in. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is one of the most famous of all of the theories of motivation. It's ironic because it actually has relatively limited research support behind it, but you'll find that many managers have heard about this in school and think about it when they think about their employees. The idea behind Maslow's hierarchy is really the idea that people have their needs met at different levels. So if somebody has a physiological need for food or for shelter, they're not going to be too worried about some of the other factors further up the hierarchy. But as their basic needs are met, as they feel safe, all of a sudden social issues and feeling accepted become much more important. Next up in the hierarchy is esteem, or how people feel about themselves. And finally, at the pinnacle is self-actualization, where people are truly engaging in the world of work or the world around them in the way that they want to be doing that. The way that Maslow really thought about this hierarchy is that as things were at the bottom of the pyramid satisfied, one would move up the hierarchy. However, that's where research doesn't really hold up. It's not really clear that that's how the model actually works. After Maslow's hierarchy came ERG theory, or existence, relatedness, growth theory. In this theory, much like Maslow's hierarchy, there are these three needs, and both of these are needs theories that we're talking about. And if we really map these onto the hierarchy, they map on well. A key difference are, obviously besides the number, there are only 3 in ERG theory, is that the theory doesn't hypothesize that when you work on one, you'll move to the other. In fact, you can go back and forth at any time according to this theory. So relatedness might be in motivation, and then existence, and then growth, and not in any particular order, and then you might go back to another one. So this is basically a clarification of Maslow's theory and an extension of it. Two-factor theory by Hertzberg is really talking about motivators and hygiene factors. This idea that there are certain things in the workplace that are inherently motivating. They're things that make us more satisfied, more excited. There are other things that at best are okay and at worst make us dissatisfied. And those are hygiene factors. And when we think about those, say for achievement as one of the top-rated motivators or satisfiers, 40% of people see a positive in their satisfaction based on their ability to have achievement in their job. Company policies, however, are related to 35% of a negative. So rather than having people bring those up as something they're excited about, policies can be a real negative drain in the organization if not implemented or if are there for no reason at all. So the way I really think about this as an example is think about your trash service. The trash in my neighborhood comes every Friday. They come, they pick up the trash, the recycling, and I have to say that it's not very often that I get excited and say, yay, the trash came today. On the other hand, on a week when the trash doesn't get picked up, people definitely are more likely to complain and feel grouchy about something not happening. So that's an example of a hygiene factor. Something that if it happens, you're fine, you're neutral, and if it doesn't happen, it can make you dissatisfied. Hopefully that clarifies a little. Now, McClellan talked about acquired needs theory, and here he really talked about three: need for achievement, the need for affiliation, and the need for power. So people with need for achievement really like to excel, they like to be successful, and they really are excited about standards and meeting those. People with high need for affiliation are really motivated by other people and relationships and groups and keeping harmony. People with a need for power are really looking to make a change, have a difference, and to really have people know that they're there to make a difference. And there are all sorts of implications that are talked about in the book. But for example, with need for achievement, we know that these individuals like things to be at about a 50-50 chance. They like jobs with a lot of personal responsibility and achievement. They want to feel like they made a difference. So they wouldn't want to go and gamble and have a huge success of winning and they feel good about themselves. But at a 50-50 chance with some skill involved, they can be much more motivated. So understanding what drives people, be it achievement, affiliation, power, or some constellation of those, can help you understand how to motivate them more, or how to motivate yourself more. And the way that some people get at this is the TAT test, where really you think about a picture and you tell a story based on that, and that's scored. So for example, they might show this picture of a woman looking at a picture, and then a person would create a story based on that, and that would show which need motivates you most. So let's get to some discussion. Let's think and reflect a little bit about motivation so far. Many managers assume that if an employee is not performing well, the reason must be a lack of motivation. Do you think this reasoning is accurate? What is the problem with this assumption? If you review Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you look back, do you agree with the particular ranking of employee needs? What do you think about the model overall? How can an organization satisfy employees' needs that are included in Maslow's hierarchy? Which motivation theory have you found to be the most useful in explaining why people behave in a certain way, and why? Next, a friend of yours demonstrates the trait of achievement motivation. This person is competitive, requires frequent and immediate feedback, and enjoys accomplishing things and doing things better than she or he did before. She has recently been promoted to a managerial position and seeks your advice. What would you tell her?
Okay, that covers that topic for right now. So remember, as always, you can go back and read about material in the book. You can go ahead and rewind the video. But at this point, we're going to move on. Here we go.
Next up is the theory of equity theory. This is a theory where people are comparing themselves, if you're the person here, to a referent other or some other person. Again, a key is comparisons. And you're thinking about the inputs and the outcomes that you put in compared to that person's inputs and outcomes. So thinking, for example, about the number of hours you work and how much you're paid. That would be an example of inputs and outcomes. So imagine that the ratio is out of whack and you are getting less. What could you do? Well, you might distort your perceptions. You might change your thinking, or you might really think about, are you really choosing the right things to think about? Are they more skilled than you previously thought, perhaps? You could increase the reference inputs and try and get them to work harder. Again, this is a mathematical equation, so on both sides, you could reduce your own input You could increase your own outcomes by asking for a raise. You could change your referent. You could compare yourself to someone else. You could leave the situation at an extreme, or you could seek legal action. So all of these are potential reactions to unfairness or perceptions of unfairness. Now, individuals differ a great deal in their equity perceptions. Some people are really very happy to have that ratio be perfectly balanced, as the theory suggests. Others are really benevolent and they'd prefer to be rewarded less than other people. And others are more entitled and would like to be over-rewarded compared to others. So this is another individual difference that comes into play in thinking about motivation. Next up, we'll talk about justice. This is another word for fairness. And research shows there are really three types of justice. There's procedural justice, the degree to which fair decision-making procedures are used to arrive at a decision. Then at the end, we have distributive justice, the degree to which outcomes received from the organization are fair. And then in the middle is interactional justice, the degree to which people are treated with respect, kindness, and dignity in interpersonal interactions at work.
Okay, so now shifting gears, let's get straight to application because we spent quite a bit of time on theory. Here we go.
Thinking about an OB toolbox related to fairness, some goals to being a fair person or some things to consider. When you're distributing rewards, make sure you pay attention to different contribution levels of employees. Sometimes you may have to disregard people's contributions to distribute certain rewards when it's not clear as what individuals have contributed. Pay attention to how or the process that you're making decisions. Pay attention to how you talk to people about decisions. Remember that justice is in the eye of the beholder and that people don't care only about their own justice levels. In fact, research shows that people care about how others are treated as well. Next up is expectancy theory. And expectancy theory is actually one of my favorite theories of motivation. And the reason I like it so much is because it's so helpful in terms of a diagnostic. Related to the model are effort leading to performance, leading to rewards. Or, as the model talks about, expectancy leading to instrumentality, leading to valence. So associated with this very simple but powerful model are three questions. If you're thinking about a person and whether or not they feel motivated, you just ask these three. Does that person believe that their effort will lead to high performance? Do they believe that high performance will lead to positive outcomes? And do they find the outcomes desirable? If any of those questions are no, that individual is likely to be unmotivated. And figuring out where they're unmotivated will figure out whether or not they need training or maybe need to find a new job. Or perhaps it's simply a matter of different incentives. So when thinking about expectancy, again, this relates to training and making sure employees have proper skills. You want to make sure you have an environment that facilitates performance rather than dampening it, and encourage employees so that they believe and know that their effort makes a difference. If a problem is instrumentality, you want to reward employee performance every time, even if that's just to say doing a great job. You want to inform people in advance about rewards, and you want to eliminate non-performance influence over rewards, such as politics. In terms of valence, find rewards that are desirable to employees. Make sure that rewards are viewed as fair, and give employees choice over rewards. Although again, research shows about choice that too much choice doesn't lead to more satisfaction. Reinforcement theory is another important theory in thinking about motivation and learning. Positive reinforcement is where positive behavior is followed by positive consequences. Negative reinforcement is where positive behavior is followed by the removal of negative consequences. Extinction is where negative behavior is followed by the removal of positive consequences, and punishment is where negative behavior is followed by negative consequences. Let's give some examples of this. For positive reinforcement, this is a manager simply praising an employee. That could be seen as a positive reinforcement. A negative reinforcement can be hard for some students to understand, but this is an example where maybe someone stops nagging at the employee when they do the desired response. Punishment is an extreme would be if a manager were to demote an employee because of a behavior that was undesirable. And a manager ignoring a behavior that they want to go away would be an example that would lead to extinction. So these are some core premises around reinforcement theory.
All right, so that's the theory that we know from our research in organizational behavior. Now, what I'd like to do is really delve into the application and get into some specifics. Let's go ahead and do that now.
Another OB toolbox that I want to share with you is how to be effective in your use of discipline. 5 factors to consider. Whether punishment is the most effective way to modify behavior. Make sure that the punishment fits the crime. Be consistent in your treatment of employees. Document the behavior in question, and be timely with discipline. One thing we know for sure about discipline is that the more that it's removed from the time in which it comes up, such as you were concerned about something in January and you mentioned that in the June performance appraisal, the less effective it's going to be in changing future behavior. Organizational behavior, or OB mod, has 5 steps. These 5 steps are simple to talk about and more challenging to do. But step 1 would be to identify behavior to be modified. Step 2 would be to measure the baseline level. Step 3, analyze antecedents and outcomes. Step 4, intervene. And 5, evaluate and maintain. Again, this is something that's easy to talk about and more challenging to put into action. Let's talk about some more discussions and reflect on what we've had here so far. Your manager tells you that the best way of ensuring fairness in reward distribution is to keep the pay a secret. How would you respond to this assertion, both based on theory and on current legal precedent? When distributing bonuses or pay, how would you ensure perceptions of fairness? Using some examples, explain the concepts of expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. Some practitioners and researchers consider OB mod unethical because it may be viewed as a way of manipulation. What would your reaction be to such a criticism?
All right, that covers the material that I had prepared for today. What I do hope, as always, is that you'll take some time and think about ways to apply this to your life. The more you do that, the more effective it'll be. Thanks, and have a great day.